and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry by Softy8088. Pinkie? Twilight's voice held a dose of concern.
What is it, Twilight?
Pinkie Pie muffled as she continued, undaunted, to transfer ever more material into her unsated maw. The corners of a large smile hid underneath the heavy squirrel-like pouches hanging from her face.
I don't think you should be eating all those,
Twilight said, but made no move to restrict her guest's actions. She merely observed with an academic sort of bewilderment. The otherwise quiet and empty background of Golden Oak's library provided the perfect environment for observing the pink pony's feeding habits. The present specimen of Pinkius Piecus finally pulled out of her gluttonous stupor, swallowed her mouth's contents in a single neck-expanding gulp, and wiped her lips.
I'm sorry, Twilight,
she said cheerfully.
I know you worked hard to bake these cookies, and you deserve to eat them more than any pony. But they're just so good! And sometimes I forget how important it is to share.
A hoof slid the silver tray back across the table. Miraculously, there was still some cookies left.
Here, have some.
Twilight eyed her own creation with distaste.
No, it's not that. I'm not really hungry.
Pinkie's eyes widened along with her grin, and she immediately grabbed another hoofful.
It's just these cookies I made? Well, they're burnt. Badly.
Twilight's magic lifted up an irregularly shaped lump, and she tapped it lightly to demonstrate. With a soft, dull crepitation, a portion of its charred shell crumbled away into flakes. She blew the crumbs, or perhaps more accurately ashes, off the table. Pinkie waved her foreleg in a classic, don't worry about it gesture.
Don't worry about it. They're only burnt on the outside, see?
She presented one cookie which had a thoughtful bite removed, revealing a dough-colored interior.
Inside, they're completely raw, so it evens out perfectly.
The sound of Twilight's face slamming into the desk echoed through the library. Twilight rubbed her forehead with a defeated grimace. I'm sorry. Spike lent out my usual cookbook, Canterlot Culinary Creators Compendium, not knowing it's not a library circulation book. And my backup, Baking Basics, was borrowed by some pony a month ago, and it's almost 2 weeks overdue.
Whoops! Has it been that long already?
Another slam. Twilight groaned. Ow. Anyway, Spike said baking cookies couldn't possibly be that hard, so I should try it without using written instructions. Twilight's gaze turned to the nominal foodstuff before her, accompanied by a deep sigh of resignation. She rolled the blackened lump between her forehooves. Lesson learned. From now on, I'm doing all my cooking by the book. Pinkie interrupted her feasting to take a deep swig of nearby tea before scooping up what remained of the charcoal-flavored pastries into her limbs.
I don't know what you're talking about, Twilight. These are good.
She chomped down another cookie with near nirvanic bliss. Twilight knitted her brows.
But eating something like that can't be healthy. Oh, I know. Mrs. Cake keeps saying I should be eating more whole grains, grasses, and vegetables instead of sugar all the time, or else I might get a vitamin deficiency, which would make me tired and sad, which would mean I couldn't have as much fun or throw as many parties, and that would be bad. But I just love sweets so much. They call out to me, Pinkie, eat us. We're so delicious.
Twilight chuckled as she watched the last of the ill-baked cookies disappear within Pinkie's grinning gob.
If only all my friends were as easy to please as you.
Her eyes rolled and the shape of her lips inverted.
Unlike a certain pony named Applejack.
Pinkie dumped a freshly filled teacup down her gullet, belched loudly, then took a curious, pensive look.
Oh yeah, you were going to tell me about that. Did you two have a fight or something?
Unfortunately, yes. Twilight's hoof continued to play with the sole surviving cookie. She came in this morning looking really uncomfortable, saying she needed a really big favor from me, but she had trouble saying what it was. I tried to make her feel as comfortable as I could and told her that as her good friend, I'd do anything I could to help. It took 10 minutes, but I finally got her to tell me. She wanted to borrow some money from me. Pinkie made no secret of her surprise.
Applejack needs money?
Twilight nodded.
With everything that's been happening at our farm the last couple years.
You know, the pear sprite infestation, Spike going on a rampage, those 2 sales ponies destroying her trees for the cider making contest, and that disaster at her family reunion. Not to mention the beavers causing the flooding a while back, a boom in the local caterpillar population, that hailstorm that accidentally got redirected over her farm. Plus, she said something about a real-life swarm of locusts, though that one was probably an exaggeration. Anyway, the point is, Sweet Apple Acres is in a financially precarious situation. Applejack wanted a short-term loan to invest in some improvements to secure the next harvest and upgrade her insurance policy to cover monster attacks.
Wow, I guess I never thought about how rough the apple farm has had it.
Pinkie said, having put on her most serious expression.
And how weird things have been around here lately. I mean, what if next year something even crazier happens? Like, maybe if the elements of harmony magically misfire and swap our cutie marks and I end up with Applejacks and I have to take her place on the farm, but it turns out I'm no good at it and all the trees die and the orchard turns into a barren wasteland.
A skeptical frown adorned Twilight's face. I don't think that's very likely.
You're probably right. So, how much money did Applejack want to borrow anyway?
45,000 bits.
Holy moly! That's a lot of doly!
Yes, I know. It is quite a large sum. But taking into account the farm's projected future income, it's actually a very prudent and solid financial move.
But that's loco! What would make Applejack think you even had that kind of money?
Twilight looked at her askance. Pinkie, I do have that kind of money. A lot more, in fact.
What?
The table shook and tea spilled as Pinkie's upper half jumped onto it.
You're rich?
Twilight avoided her friend's wide-eyed stare as her magic quickly and efficiently tidied up the mess. I guess you could say that. For a pony my age, I do have a relatively high personal net worth. My account balance at Canterlot Central Bank is at 6 digits. Well, 8 if you include the cents, which one always should for proper accounting.
But that means you're loaded, in the money, rolling in the money.
Pinkie's forelimbs gesticulated madly and then stopped dead.
Twilight, do you ever roll in your money?
I tried it once, but it wasn't very fun. The coins are all hard and kind of dirty, and they smell bad, and you can't even eat them. Unless you get those ones that are chocolate on the inside, but that's not really money, even though it'd be pretty nice if it were. And don't even try diving into a pile of gems. I almost broke my neck that time. I prefer rolling in chocolate sauce, or at least sprinkles, but if you start with chocolate sauce and then move on to the sprinkles... Wait, Twilight interjected. Her frown deepened. How and when did you have enough money to literally roll around in it?
Oh, it wasn't really my money,
Pinkie explained, having flipped from a stunned shock to a laid-back geniality with all the effort of a page being turned.
My parents' rock farm brings in at least $250,000 every year. Dad believes in keeping a large reserve cash float in the treasury. He let me into the vault one time to see our assets.
Her forehead wrinkled lightly.
Then he didn't let me into the vault any time after that. Never knew why.
Twilight could guess, but she was more surprised at her friend's hidden wealth.
I guess the one time was enough to teach me the most important lesson about finance,
Pinkie continued.
Which was... neck braces are expensive. At least I think that was the lesson.
She scratched her head with a vaguely confused look. Twilight poured out some fresh tea. I never knew your family was so well off.
Oh, rock farming is a booming business out west. Dad always said it was a rock-solid career choice.
Pinkie bounced in her seat a few times before stopping abruptly.
I don't think he ever understood why that was funny. But what about you, Twilight? How did you become rich? Was it with a super smart, super schemy, get-rich-quick super scheme?
Absolutely not, Twilight snapped, clearly offended by the mere suggestion. I simply saved it all, she responded much more calmly, accompanied by a dignified sip of brew.
Saved it all?
Twilight nodded her head proudly. It started with my allowance. By the time I was accepted into Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns, I had 3 piggy banks full of bits saved up. I'd always get some money for birthdays and hearts warming too, but I used most of that money for gifts for others. Her teeth shone and her eyes misted. Oh, I loved hearts warming. A month before, I'd stay up late working on my gift budget in my secret ledger. Then every pony got a gift valued based on how much time I spent with them, which I'd kept track of throughout the year. Shining Armor and Smarty Pants always battled for the top spot,
but I may have creatively rounded the numbers just a little so that my brother would always get the best gift. Any money left over in the gift budget ledger went to the savings ledger, along with my allowance. So that's how you made your fortune? Haha, on the 5 bits a week my parents gave me, it would have taken centuries to earn what I have now. No, Pinkie, most of my savings came from my stipend. Oh, that makes sense. Pinkie smiled and nodded, making it clear she understood. Just one question. What's a stipend? Well, you see, I'm not just a regular student in Princess Celestia's school. I'm her private student. My royal sponsorship comes with a stipend. Money I'm supposed to use to live on so that I can focus my magic studies full-time without having to hold a separate job. It's like a salary, but distinct because it's not, strictly speaking, paid for the work I do, but to ensure a livelihood so that I can perform functions that aren't normally wage-earning responsibilities. Oh, now I get it. It's enough money for food and lodging for both me and Spike, with a little extra for incidental expenses. But the thing is, she dug at the back of her neck. I hardly use any of it. Twilight faced downward, the slightest tint of embarrassment playing across her features. Pinkie's head bobbed with a rhythmic squeak, beckoning elucidation. Left with no choice, Twilight carried on. See, the stipend is calculated to support a resident of Canterlot, but living costs in Ponyville are a fraction of that. Not that it even matters. Ever since I moved here, I haven't had to pay anything for housing. As Ponyville's resident librarian, I get to stay in the loft rent-free. And since Golden Oaks is technically classified as a public building, I don't pay any property taxes or utilities. The tint slowly worked into a visible blush. I don't pay for any of my study supplies either. Any books I need, parchment, paper, quills, ink, research materials, laboratory equipment, all that can be expensed directly to the royal treasury without me needing to touch my own funds. Even things like train tickets to and from Canterlot qualify. Anything I need that is directly related to my studies or any request or order from Princess Celestia, I expense. The princess herself insisted on it. Just about the only thing I do need to pay for is food. And with how often you or Applejack come by with homemade treats, I barely have to do that either. In the end, over 90% of my income goes straight into savings. She finished at last, 2 spots of bright pink highlighting her cheeks. Twilight, Pinkie began. That is wonderful! She appeared beside Twilight and pulled her into a literally breathtaking and possibly rib-cracking hug. That means that Applejack's farm is saved! Something in Twilight's spine snapped sinisterly. She dropped to the floor in a heap upon being released. Pinkie repeatedly rattled a noisemaker while hopping in place amidst a shower of inexplicable confetti. Pinkie. Oh, and that means apples, apple pies, apple fritters, and applesauce for years to come. Pinkie. And apple cider. Oh, I have to tell Rainbow Dash the good news. But wait, she needs to know the bad news first. Pinkie. And you know what this calls for? Pinkie. A party! Pinkie! Pinkie stopped and fluttered her eyelids. Yes, Twilight? It didn't work out that way. Applejack and I got into an argument, remember? Her farm's still in trouble, and she still needs money. Pinkie tossed her hat and deflated party horn aside and wriggled out of her hula skirt. Her brows knitted harshly. But I don't get it. Applejack came to you asking to borrow 45,000 bits. And since you have all that plus more saved up, you loaned it to her. So what's the problem? Did it turn out to not be enough? Having restored herself to her previous seat at the table and painfully snapping her vertebrae back into alignment, Twilight snorted. I most certainly did not lend Applejack any money. What? Instead of a hug, Twilight now found herself trapped in a face-distorting death grip of Pinkie's hooves against her cheeks. Why not? Why do you hate Applejack? The first attempt at an answer failed to produce anything intelligible. Only when a bright flash of magic deposited the pink personal space invader a safe distance away was Twilight able to massage her muzzle into normal operation and restore her speech. Applejack is my friend, a very good friend, and it's never a good idea to lend money to your friends. Money issues are the #1 cause of relationship troubles, both in romantic and platonic contexts. Every book I've read on the subject says so. Her hoof indicated the shelves of knowledge surrounding them. She straightened her posture and lifted her chin. Neither borrower nor lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend.
she recited with an up-pointing hoof, eyes shut and mouth serious. My friendship with Applejack is simply too important to me. I can't allow any feelings of resentment to develop between us because of a loan. Pinkie sat in a stunned post-teleportation heap. Her head joggled and pitched to one side. Applejack's your friend? So you refuse to help her? I never said I refused to help, Twilight corrected, returning a portion of her attention to her teacup and forsaken blackened baked bag. I just refused to extend her a loan. I came up with a far better solution. I offered to give Applejack the money as a gift with no expectation of repayment. That way, Sweet Apple Acres would get the funds it needs, and there wouldn't be any financial obligations between me and Applejack. It's the perfect solution for every pony. Pinkie regarded her with reverence. Wow, Twilight, and I thought generosity was Rarity's thing. I'd do the same for any of my friends, Twilight said as she took a fresh sip of tea. Really? You'd give away a fortune just like that? Even to Fluttershy? Or Rainbow Dash? Or Rarity? Or Pinkie Pie? Twilight stopped the potentially endless flow of questions by stopping its source with her hoof. It squeaked when she did so. Yes, I would, because you're all my friends, and helping one another is part of being a good friend. Although it wouldn't be just like that, and not all the time. I don't want any pony to become financially dependent on me in the long term. That wouldn't be doing my friends any favors. But in an exceptional circumstance, like say a theft, a market crash, or even a loan gone bad, I'd be perfectly willing to make a one-time gift to help stave off serious financial trouble. Applejack's situation certainly qualifies. I explained all of this to her earlier today, and do you know what happened next? Nuh-uh. She got angry at me. Twilight threw her hooves in the air. Can you believe it? She said she wasn't some charity case, whatever that means. She was acting like I had offended her. The expression on Twilight's face was one ponies typically reserved for watching overfed pigs attempting to mate while covered in their own excrement. I was trying to keep our friendship strong, but she was arguing that she wanted to keep it strictly business and that she wasn't looking for hoof-outs. Ugh! I tried to tell her everything I've read and how lending money to friends never ends well, but she wouldn't listen. Even after I explained in detail that it wasn't a problem for me to give her the money and it was only logical, she wouldn't budge. She actually said, right to my face, that she'd rather lose Sweet Apple Acres than be reduced to begging. Which makes no sense at all because she didn't solicit my gift. I offered it to her, which is by definition not begging. The outburst having purged a good portion of her energy, Twilight splayed her upper self onto the tabletop. I swear, sometimes that pony is as stubborn as a mule. Came a loud bray from outside an open window. Twilight straightened and addressed the passing equine. No offense. Done taken. The friendly half-breed drawled before going on his way. Twilight slammed the window shut with a loud exhale as she moved on to the conclusion of her tirade. I really thought that after the whole Applebuck season fiasco and the cider pressing fiasco, Applejack had learned that she could accept help from her friends without shame, but I guess the lesson just didn't go far enough. I'm really at the end of my rope with her. I tried everything I could to convince her, to educate her, but I just can't seem to get through that thick Stetson hat of hers. Did you try taking it away from her? That's a nice idea, Pinkie, but I don't think it's her hat that's really the problem. Pinkie's face contorted in a truly impressive display of cogitation. One of her ears flicked as if tickled by the ideas bouncing in her head. There's just one thing I still don't get, she announced at length. And what's that? Why didn't you just give Applejack the money, pretend it was a loan to make her feel good about it, and write it off as a gift? Wouldn't that make it okay? No, Pinkie, it wouldn't. You can't just go calling something by a different name to make it acceptable. The money is either a loan or a gift, and saying that it's one thing when it's really another is incorrect. Not to mention it goes against my deepest beliefs about friendship, fair dealing, common decency, and even language. It's an offense against the dictionary. Not that I expect somebody like Applejack to understand all of that. Twilight's expression turned sour. The point is, being a good friend should not involve being deceitful or sacrificing my principles. Pinkie smiled a small smile. I understand. You're the princess's prize-promising protege and pupil. Your personal principles and individual integrity are paramount. Yes! Thank you, Pinkie, for paying attention to everything I've been saying. Twilight grinned, fully and genuinely for the first time that afternoon. I think you might actually be up for the assignment. She clapped her hooves together lightly as her eyes narrowed in determination. The assignment? That's right, Pinkie. As hard as it is for me to say, I failed in helping Applejack. I want to be a good friend to her, but this situation exceeds my current friendship skill level. If I can't convince her to accept my help myself, I'm obligated to try any other method I can, which is why I've called you here. At these words, the unicorn stood up, her posture firm and authoritative to the point she could have given her own brother a run for his command. Pinkie played along without missing a beat, springing to attention in the space of a single blink. Twilight began pacing purposefully. I believe a different approach may hold the key, or, to be more precise, a different pony. Applejack has failed to respond to logic and reasoned argument backed by thorough research. I tried using my intelligence and knowledge to convince her. Paradoxically, a pony who isn't quite as structured as I am might succeed in getting through to Applejack. She spun on her hooves, facing the pink earth pony muzzle to muzzle, her brows at a grimly severe angle. Pinkie Pie, would you please go talk some sense into Applejack? There was a pause. Twilight blinked as if waking from a dream. Huh, that's a phrase I never thought I'd hear myself say. Yes, sir, ma'am, sir, Pinkie saluted. I have just one last question. What is it? She pointed to the dull black lump still on the table. Are you going to eat that? Applejack cantered through the acres of her acres. 4 empty extra-large apple baskets atop her head bobbed in rhythm with her steps. Her current goal was a rather large and leafy golden delicious tree at the summit of an otherwise nondescript hill. Its ripe and hanging prizes made even more golden as they reflected and shone in the day's late afternoon sun. Beneath its boughs, she deposited the baskets with a simple yet eminently effective toss of her head, only pausing for a second to hoof adjust the position of one by a few inches, bringing it into 4-cornered alignment with the others. From within, her hoof retrieved her trusty Stetson hat and returned it to its rightful place. After wiping the sweat from her brow and giving a satisfied nod, she turned around, backed up to the tree, and shifted her weight forward. In motion so practiced and ingrained that she could have performed them in her sleep, her hind hooves left the ground, only to pummel back with all the force the pony's well-worked muscles could give. The kick landed solidly, reverberating up the trunk and convincing the laden branches to release their fruit. They also released something else. Whoa! A raspy cry tore the air as a pony-sized mass of cyan blue trimmed in accents of rainbow fell to meet the grass, displacing one of the baskets and making a mess of the neat pile of apples that were supposed to have landed there. Applejack tipped her Stetson upward as she took in the sight of a rainfall of golden delicious pattering off the container atop the interloper's head, and then rolling in all directions. Dang it, Rainbow. I told you keep napping in my trees and you're just asking for trouble. I ain't gonna be responsible for you getting hurt. The cyan pony groaned as she struggled to remove both her basket hat and climb to her unsteady hooves. She only succeeded at the first task, and even that with some difficulty. Applejack exhaled again. Here, let me help you. The proffered limb was gratefully accepted, and the recovering mare spat a loose feather from her mouth as balance found her. Feeling okay there, Rainbow Dash? As if the fall had never happened, the pony sprung up into a bouncy stance, a wide grin splitting her face. Wow-wee, that was lots of fun, she chirped in a register much higher than Ponyville's resident weather manager was normally capable of. I'm feeling super-duper fine, Applejack. The world's still spinning a little bit, and it's like I've got an ice cream headache, even though I haven't eaten any ice cream. But I'm sure that's just temporary. Applejack recoiled at the clearly mismatched voice. What the? Pinkie Pie? Yep! Pinkie unzipped and discarded her costume. What in tarnation? Applejack questioned, then shut her eyes and kneaded her forehead in a self-calming gesture. Pinkie, why are you dressed up like Rainbow Dash? And what are you doing up in my tree? Oh, I'm just trying to be considerate of my hard-working friend. Considerate? Really? Uh-huh. Pinkie nodded her head vigorously.
Ponies keep telling me that the way I appear is really startling sometimes. And I figured if I just dropped out of your tree when you bucked it, you'd be pretty startled. And after a busy day in the fields, you might not appreciate it. But then I thought, Rainbow Dash often naps in your trees, so if I dressed up like her and then fell out of your tree, you'd think I was her and you wouldn't be so startled. And it worked! Ha ha! Pinkie's smile squeaked with pride. Applejack tilted her head. Thanks, I guess?
You're welcome.
And you just happen to own a realistic costume of Rainbow Dash? Oh, don't worry. It's nothing weird. I have one of you, too. Applejack's lower left eyelid twitched. She shook her head rapidly. So, moving right along, what brings you here? She rightened the overturned basket and began retrieving scattered apples one by one. Pinkie immediately joined in to help. Twilight told me you were having money issues. Consarn it! Applejack grabbed her Stetson and hurled it to the ground in a fit of fury. That was supposed to be a private conversation. You know, a secret. I can't believe she's blabbing about it. Steam flew from her nostrils and her cheeks flushed. Did you make her Pinkie swear not to tell? Pinkie asked. Well, no, but it was obvious. She should know that money talk ain't ever supposed to leave the room. You have to be patient and understanding with Twilight, Pinkie said in a mollifying tone. She's a good friend, but sometimes she really misses the obvious hints for how to behave around other ponies. It can make her seem insensitive. A few more apples arced into the basket. So how come your family's in the poorhouse? Pinkie! What? We ain't in the poorhouse! Applejack pressed her nose to the pink ponies, storm clouds rolling in her eyes. We don't even need the money that bad. She pulled away and re-equipped her signature headwear. But Twilight said, it ain't good, but it ain't the end of Equestria either. Big Mac and I worked the numbers. Worst case, we might have to sell off a part of the acres. A part. And even then, if we just pull together and keep the rest going strong, we're going to be able to buy it back in a couple of years. I asked Twilight for the loan to save us the trouble. She snorted out a huff and busied herself with picking up the wayward fruit once more, though her eyes seemed to dampen slightly. I don't get it, Pinkie said, laying her head atop her forehooves on the rim of the basket, even as her tail continued flicking fruit. If you need to borrow a ton of money, why didn't you just go to the bank? That's what they're for, silly. An angry blush crept onto Applejack's face. I did. She swallowed something bitter. They didn't want to give us another loan. Went through our files and said it was too high risk. She slowly spun around searching, but, with Pinkie's assistance, all the escaped fruit had been successfully corralled. Pinkie Pie rubbed her chin. Did they say anything about your combined loan-to-value ratio exceeding the recently released guidelines for Class B agricultural concession land liens as set out by the Equestrian Central Banking Authority of Memorandum 27B-6? Applejack blinked. Yeah, sounds familiar. Well, that explains it. If you asked for the loan 6 months ago, they probably would have given it to you. No problem. Applejack grunted as she hefted one of the filled containers onto her back. If you say so. Don't help me much now, does it? Nope, Pinkie replied cheerfully, picking up another basket, oblivious to the eye roll she received. The two ponies carried their respective loads through a short path to a small hillside inset apple cellar, keeping up a healthy trot all the while. Applejack certainly didn't seem to have a lot of time to waste, and her boundlessly energetic friend's help received a silent but grateful assenting glance, though there still seemed to be an angry thunderhead just inches above Applejack, following her every move. Pinkie leaped onto her back to dispel it with a flurry of hooves, balancing on the basket rim. Oof, hey! There, all better! She jumped off. No apples had been spilled in the unlikely maneuver, which Applejack verified with a single surprised eyebrow. Then she went back to scowling. I'll be better when I can find some pony to lend me 45 big ones. She deposited the produce inside the cellar with a tired groan that was likely more the result of her current emotional state than any physical exhaustion, then took off at a canter back towards the tree, Pinkie still hopping blithely alongside. Then why didn't you just take Twilight's gift? Pinkie asked. Because I ain't a charity case. It's a matter of honor. The apples have never needed hoofouts to survive, and as Celestia is my witness, it's not going to happen while I'm running the farm. Pinkie nodded her head reassuringly. I understand. For you, it's about being self-sufficient, having pride in your own abilities, and not forcing your problems on other ponies. like a personal moral code that's practically a part of your identity. Compromising your principles would be giving up an important part of yourself, like baking a cake that no pony's allowed to eat, or even use in a food fight.
For the first time, a small smile blossomed on Applejack's muzzle.
Huh, well, I'll be.
Pinkie, you actually understand. They paused underneath the tree to load up the remaining apples, Applejack looking ever more thankful for the assistance, then started back to the cellar. I just wish Twilight could see what you see. I tried explaining it to her, but it's like some pony poured applesauce in her ears. She just kept going on and on about how a simple loan between honest friends would make us turn on each other, like rabid timber wolves. I wanted to keep this money business all business-like, you know? Fair and square deal all around. Sign a contract and everything. No hard feelings. She made it sound like I was wanting to sell my soul to Nightmare Moon. Humph. I swear, sometimes that pony's as stubborn as a mule. No offense. None taken. Seemingly determined to make up the precious few seconds she had just spent apologizing, Applejack now went into a frustrated gallop, only skidding to a stop when she ran out of ground at the entrance to her storeroom. Pinkie, of course, had kept perfect pace with a carefree skip.
Why didn't you just take the money, pretend it was a gift to make Twilight feel good about it, and then give it back later? Wouldn't that make it okay?
No, Pinkie, it wouldn't. You can call a pig a duck, but it don't make a lick of difference to the pig, and it makes you a mighty sorry liar. The money's either a loan or a gift, and saying it's one thing then trying to make it the other is lying. Not sure whether I'd be lying to her or myself at the end of the day, but either way, I'd be pulling a fast one. It wouldn't be a square deal. Not that I'd expect some pony like Twilight to understand that. Applejack's expression turned sour. Point is, I ain't doing it. There ain't nothing honorable about it. As the last of the apples were secured inside, Pinkie and Applejack exited, closing the cellar doors behind them. Applejack brought the brim of her Stetson low to shield her eyes from the shallowing sun. Pinkie froze, appearing strangely wistful for a few moments, head a-tilt. When she spoke again, her usual flippant cheer had been replaced with an uncharacteristic gravitas.
Applejack, there's no shame in accepting help from your friends in a time of need.
She gently rubbed her agitated companion's withers.
Asking for help doesn't mean you lose a part of yourself, because your friends are a part of you. Remember that one time when you worked extra double mega hard all by yourself and made yourself all sick and woozy? But then we all pitched in to help with your apple bucking, and you got better. More like the Applejack we all know and love. And I've been helping you carry your apples today without you even asking, and you didn't mind that.
Applejack drew a long breath, a slight shudder transiting her damp shoulders. I know, Pinkie. And the truth is, I'm mighty grateful for your help today. I know I have friends I can count on, and y'all like my family. Her eyes glistened as she looked to her ally. I know there's no shame in asking for help when you need it, but there's still some lines I'm just not willing to cross, no matter the stakes. A day working in the field is one thing. Heck, giving me a loan and trust me when the banks wouldn't even touch me? I'll remember that till my dying day. But taking money from some pony? Thousands of bits, just like that? I just can't do it. It's too far. A moment of serenity elapsed as the two ponies stood side by side, facing the dying sun, the passage marked by the languid sway of leaves in a lightly scented evening breeze rolling over the fields that were Applejack's life, her home, her pride. Applejack wiped something away from the corner of her eyes, then inhaled the gentle wind, energizing her features. You're a good friend, Pinkie. And if it's not too much to ask, could you help me out with a couple more trees before it gets dark? I'm kind of behind schedule on account of our cart's broken, so I'm having to lug all these apples on my own hooves. I'd be much obliged for another set of legs to get the job done quicker. Serious Pinkie's appearance had been an ephemeral event, and playful Pinkie, back in full force, jumped at the chance. Literally.
I'd love to help. Apple bucking is my 28th most favoriteest thing to do on Sweet Apple Acres on a summer evening, which is pretty high because there are 311 things on my list of favorite things to do on Sweet Apple Acres on a summer evening. Oh, but before we start, do you mind if we do my most favoriteest thing of all to do on Sweet Apple Acres on a summer evening?
Though her eyes rolled once more, Applejack smiled. Sure thing, Pinkie, long as it's quick. What'd you have in mind? The beam on Pinkie Pie's face outshone all else as she practically vibrated in anticipation.
I'm gonna save your farm!
Come again?
I'm gonna save your farm!
One of Applejack's eyelids lowered in suspicion. All right, you got my attention. What's your plan?
If you can't get the money you need from Twilight, you could just get it from me!
Applejack's face was a tilted picture of surprise and confusion.
Now wait just one cotton-picking minute.
Pinkie, are you saying you actually have 45,000 bits just lying around? Because I never figured you to be one to sit on that kind of dough.
Oh, Applejack, you can't keep thousands of bits worth of dough just sitting around, or to sit on. It just goes stale if you don't bake it into something yummy.
Right. What I meant was, where are you going to get all this cash from? At this, Pinkie whipped her head in one direction, then another, zipping around, over, and even under Applejack, as if searching for something, going as far as to briefly rip up a carpet of grassy soil to check beneath it. Ultimately satisfied at having found nothing at all, she lifted up Applejack's ear and whispered,
I know ponies.
Applejack appeared skeptical as she cleaned out her ear canal. Ponies? You mean like rich ponies? Since when?
Since I was born, silly. Didn't I ever tell you about my parents and the Pie Rock Farm fortune?
That'd be a no.
Well, that's because you never asked. The point is, for a loan to the most dependable, reliable, responsible pony I know, I can get the money. My dad always said to be on the lookout for a good investment, and Granny Pie said you should always help out a pony in need. So this idea is double good, like rolling around in chocolate sauce and sprinkles.
Applejack stared widely at Pinkie, the faint sparks of hope in her eyes daring to burn brighter. So, we can get this done? A loan from you to me, 45,000 bits, bona fide business deal, all fair and square?
Sure thing. I even have the loan agreement all written out.
Pinkie tossed her head low to the ground, whereupon her pink curls birthed a scroll of parchment, which she then unrolled with a tiny kick. Applejack lifted her leg in retreat, as if the unfurling document was some possibly dangerous creature snaking its way over the grass.
The interest rate is 1.25% annual compounded monthly,
Pinkie explained from beneath a pair of horn-rimmed glasses.
You won't get a rate that low from any bank in Equestria. I penned in a 5-year term, but if you look at paragraph 17, you'll see that you can make unlimited payments early with no penalty. That means you can pay back the loan as soon as you have the money and save a ton on interest. This section here describes grace periods, and down here you have the late payment penalties, which follow the standard ERA formula, so no surprises there. Oh, and it's an unsecured loan, so our deal is basically held together by my trust in your honor and family name. Isn't that great?
A dumbfounded Applejack only nodded faintly as she sat and grasped the top of the scroll. Methodically, her eyes perused the document from the first line to the last. Although the text was hardly small, the entire parchment measured some 2.5 pony lengths in size, and was filled with clauses detailing seemingly every possible eventuality. Pinkie Pie stood beside her, still radiating excitement, but keeping utterly silent as Applejack smartly exercised her due diligence with all the sobriety the circumstance demanded. By the time she finished, the sun had fully set, and the acres were bathed in true twilight. Pinkie, Applejack said at last, breaking out into a grin. This here is exactly what I need, what the farm needs. In all this time, I'd been working up the nerve to go see Rarity. You can imagine I wasn't looking forward to that conversation. Just talking to Twilight was hard enough. But this is just perfect. Oh, I could just kiss you right now. Ah! Pinkie blushed, then held out her cheek. Well, I didn't mean it. It's just a figure of speech. Her hoof scratched behind her head. Ah, what the hey. Without further ado, she threw the still-waiting pony into a hug, planting a quick peck on her cheek along the way. They held the embrace for a few moments until all of Pinkie's unruly giggling had died down. You're a good friend, Applejack said as the pair finally released. I owe you one.
Actually, you owe me 1.25.
Glancing at the fading light of the sky, Applejack collected herself and began rolling up the precious farm-saving document. Shoot, I didn't realize how late it was. Boy, I can't wait to see Big Mac's face when I tell him I got everything taken care of.
But you didn't, Pinkie pointed out. You still need to sign it to make it official. Unless you need some more time to think, it's a big decision. No pressure.
Are you kidding? I know a good deal when I see one, and I ain't about to look this gift horse in the mouth. You got a quill? No sooner had Applejack asked than a pre-inked feather appeared in front of her, courtesy of Pinkie.
Just initial beside the interest rate in the term, then sign and date on the dotted line.
And with a few quick strokes, the deal was sealed. Pinkie putting her own name after Applejack's with a playful flourish before tucking the document back into the unfathomable depths of her mane for safekeeping. In its place, she produced a much smaller, rectangular piece of paper.
Here you go, a check for 45,000 bits.
Applejack held it for a moment, then a moment longer, her eyes hungrily devouring it with all the eager possessiveness of a young dragon faced with a hoard of rubies. She caressed its edge as if to make sure it was real, then carefully folded and tucked it away beneath her trusty Stetson. She let out a long breath and smiled. All right, Pinkie, let's hear it.
Hear what?
Applejack regarded Pinkie with a cagey eye. Don't you have any plans on account of this here deal? Like maybe a get-together to celebrate? A shindig? A bash? A hootenanny? She bit her lip and shied her head. Party?
Oh, yeah, sure,
Pinkie agreed.
We saved Sweet Appleacre's party. I'll put it together. Is Tuesday good for you?
Applejack's cagey eye turned even cagier. Really? Tuesday? As in, not today?
Oh, I thought you wanted to tell your family first and rest after a hard day. But if you want, I can throw something together right now. I think I have my party cannon still.
Tuesday's perfect, Applejack blurted with a powerful slap and squeeze of Pinkie's shoulders. I'll see you then.
Wait, aren't we supposed to buck a few more apple trees?
Pinkie recalled as she was shoved in the general direction of Ponyville. Pinkie, I've been working my tail off since before sunup. I'm tired and sore and about $3 away from setting off another rabbit stampede. I don't say this often, but I could really use a break. And thanks to you, I can actually afford one. You're a lifesaver, but I need to go home, give every pony the good news, and sleep.
Okie dokie Loki,
Pinkie called as she skipped merrily away. At the last moment, she paused.
Oh, I almost forgot. The money's not in my account yet, so don't cash that check until Monday. You can wait that long, right?
Applejack looked back, relief and gratitude still shining beneath her exhausted features. Not a problem, Pinkie. I'll see you. And if you happen to see Twilight before I do, tell her I'm sorry about today. And I hope there's no bad blood between us. A happy answer leaped over the crest of the hill.
Will do!
The front door to the Golden Oaks Library sounded with a rapid series of impacts from some durable and suspiciously hollow-sounding object. Twilight opened the entryway to see Pinkie Pie nervously tiptoeing in place, biting her lip and rubbing her forehead.
Hey, Twilight!
She greeted quickly, her pleading, desperate eyes immediately fixing on the unicorn as if she were salvation itself.
I have a really big problem that's come up, and if I don't fix it soon, I'm going to be in really, really deep trouble, and things are going to go really, really wrong, and I desperately need your help as a close friend.
She spilled it all out in a single needy breath, then pouted pathetically. Well, of course, Pinkie, Twilight replied with a gentle smile. I'm always willing to help a friend in trouble. What do you need me to do? What happened? Should I call the others? Pinkie shook her head.
I just need one thing. You see, I kind of wrote this really big check that I don't have the money in my bank account to cover. And if I don't have that money in the account by Monday morning, there's going to be serious financial trouble. And you're the only pony I know who has enough to cover it and save me from being a fraud and a criminal and a vile, terrible pony.
Pinkie suddenly flashed a smile.
So anyway, can I have 45,000 bits?
The end. Oh, wait, there's an epilogue.
Dear Princess Celestia, ponies sure are complicated. Two friends can be very different, and I'm not just talking about their manes or coats. When two ponies see the world in completely different ways, it can put a real strain on their friendship. And sometimes, what seems like the obvious solution to satisfy them both just plain doesn't work. Because it turns out the way you see the world is even more different than either of theirs. Today I learned that resolving differences between friends can be very hard, especially when your attempt to help only makes things worse. Whether it's a badly timed piano number or an accidental case of profit mongering. But as long as your heart is in the right place and you're willing to do what it takes, your friends will always forgive you and each other. That's why I'm happy to tell you the good news, that Twilight, Applejack, and I are still pony friends forever, and that I'm pledging to donate 48,000 bits over the next 5 years to the Equestrian Farmland Trust. The EFT is a super terrific organization, which helps all kinds of farmers protect their farmlands, from rock farms to apple farms and everything in between. They also offer easy, dirt cheap loans to farmers who are struggling with their businesses. Did you know about that last part? Because I sure didn't, and neither did Twilight or Applejack. Pretty embarrassing, huh? The world would be a very boring place if everybody were exactly the same, and it's our differences that make us special. When those differences threaten to tear a friendship apart, you need to take a step back, talk things over, and have some cake, and the answer will always come. Respectfully yours, Pinkie Pie. P.S. Since my friends and I report to you on our lessons in friendship, that makes us all your students, right? My banking information is on the next page. Please pass it on to the Royal Treasury. I think they might not have it because I haven't been receiving my stipend.
Now it's the end.